You idiot. Now everyone sees it. You must hide your chi.
Who knew? What a killer!
You reek, soldier. Have you even showered once yet?
You smell bad.
Jude, I'm glad I found you. I see you're finally getting clean. The 5th Battalion thanks you.
I came here to be alone.
What was that today? It was incredible.
I don't want to talk about it.
Why not? I can't believe all this time you've been keeping your skill a secret. What else have you been hiding?
Nothing. Leave me alone.
Arjun, we started off on the wrong foot. Can we be friends?
I'm not your friend.
Very well. But you are my equal. We fight together against the same enemy. I will do all I can to protect the others. You can turn your back on me. But when the time comes, do not turn your back on them.
Hello and welcome to Book versus Movie. This is a podcast where we read books that have been adapted into movies, and then we try to decide which we like better, the book or the movie. I am Margot P. of coloniabook.com, and this is my good friend and co-host, Margot D. of Brooklyn Fitchick.
Hi, everyone.
Margot D. of Brooklyn Fitchick, who has a book available for pre-sale right now.
Yes.
Let's just mention it right out of the top. I just remembered.
I'm
so
super
exciting.
It's very exciting. We have a pub date of October 14th. It's called Filmed in Brooklyn. It's on Amazon right now. We're just finishing up what the cover's going to look like. But if you're interested, go to Amazon, look up Margot Donahue, and you will find Filmed in Brooklyn. You can pre-order a copy. This is for the U.S. I'm finding out about Kindle and Canada and other places. That is to be determined. But yes, Margot, thank you very much for letting me mention that at the top.
I'm sure it will be available on Kindle because mine is, and we're with the same publisher.
Right.
Although I'll tell you, it took a little while. It wasn't available at first, but now it is.
Okay.
So if you are new, yes, Margot's book is exciting because it is about movies. And this is a podcast about books and movies. This pandemic time over 2 years ago now, we decided to do a brand new episode every single week. And so in order to do that, we've had to kind of expand our idea of what a book is to include really any literary source. So, is it a play? Is it a magazine article? Is it a short story, a novella, or an epic poem, as we're going to discuss today? We are constantly looking for new adaptations that we can talk about on this podcast. Maybe you have some ideas for some you'd like to share with us. Maybe you'd like to talk about the show with other listeners. There's a few places where you could do that on the internet.
We do have a basic Facebook page. All the episodes are posted there. Be sure to like that if you're on Facebook. We're much more interactive in our Facebook group. In the group, we talk about books and movies. We talk about ideas for episodes coming up. It's really just a nice, safe space. We really just talk about books and movies there, which is a miracle on Facebook to be able to do that. We're on Twitter and Instagram. At those places, you spell out book versus and movie. Please follow us there if you have those social media accounts on your phone. And boy, that makes me sound like 100 years old if you have those social media accounts on your phone. Jeez. We're recording this on a different
Download
day
the
and time.
Facebook app. Go to your app store.
We're recording this on a different day and time. It just hit 89, Margot. Like it was 60 the other day.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's horrible. It's so hot. Anyway, we do have a basic old-timey email. Book versus movie podcast. Spell that all out at gmail.com. And once again, as Margot said, whatever literary source you're thinking of, the movie that is being adapted, it needs to be something on a major streaming app so that we can it's easy for us to get it, but also for the audience to be able to watch it. If it's on some rare, streaming service in Zurich or something like that, or it's on a VHS copy about this book that's sponsored today, by the way. If it's on, that just doesn't work for us. So just keep that in mind. In all those places, we love suggestions, and please feel free to reach out.
Yeah, having it be accessible for everybody is really, really super important. And fortunately, the literary source of today's episode, super easy to get your hands on for free. We'll talk about it in just a minute, but we just want to mention also, if you really enjoy the show and you would like to help keep us in books and movies, you can also support us on Patreon.
We do have a Patreon page. We're putting all of the episodes up there from 2020 today and then previous to that. So all of them are going up there. We have almost 100 episodes there. Some are free because they're just much older. We've been doing this for about 8 years now. But some of the recent ones we just put up there that are really cool from the last couple of years: Die Hard, Hidden Figures, Shrek, and The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. Those are just the ones we've done in the last few weeks. You go to Patreon. I want to thank Jesse for supporting us, and thank you so much for doing that. We really appreciate it. But also, if money is tight, we totally get that. If you could just leave us a review wherever you get the podcast, on any app that you use, that would be amazing. Leave some stars, whatever.
And as Margot mentioned just a moment ago, this episode is brought to you by Kensington's newest title, Unstable by Alexandra Ivy.
And this is my jam because I like those spooky thrillers that have like a little bit of romance in them. This is set in a small town. It's about a couple that were together. They were married. Now they're divorced. They're in Pike, Wisconsin. And then there's a serial killer that he's leaving bodies out, and he's using old VHS tapes of people that thought they were disappeared, but now they're murdered. And now it's a whole thing. They have this.
Like you do.
Like one does. It's
Margot loves this kind of book, by the way. Like, this
do.
is so her jam.
I gobble this stuff up right away, and she's a great writer. I think she's been on the show. We've talked about her books in the past. Once again, that's called Unstable. It's Alexandra Ivy. It's from Kensington Books, and you can follow her on Twitter at Alexandra Ivy. And thank you, Kensington Books, for supporting our show. We really appreciate it.
You can find Unstable by Alexandra Ivy wherever books are sold. Find out more at kensingtonbooks.com. Now, we are still kind of in the middle of AAPI History Month. And last week we talked about a great movie called Raise the Red Lantern. If you didn't hear last week's episode, please do go check it out. If you are unfamiliar with the work of the genius that is Gong Li,
Yes.
it's a great place to start. And we're going to be talking about her today. Now, today, though, we're talking about a movie. So here's something we should talk about, because a lot of people are going to be listening to this episode, I think, because it's a Disney movie, maybe because it's AAPI month, but we're going to be talking about the live action Mulan. Now, going into this, what we want you to know is that neither one of us had seen either version of this movie ever before. The original Mulan came out before I had kids, so I was not aware of it. And when this one came out, and we'll talk about the timing, my kids were already too old for this kind of movie, so I was also unaware of it. So I hadn't seen it at all. People have real strong feelings about this movie.
Yeah.
Wow. I had no idea.
We did not. We were actually we were planning out our
We were like,
schedule
oh,
for
that'll
the
be
month.
fun.
We're like, oh, Mulan's based on a poem. We can get a poem. That's easy. And we'll just talk about the live action version because that's the most recent. And as Margot said, I'd never seen it. I don't have kids, but I
Nor
know
I.
there's a generation, like there's my generation of the 70s and 80s that likes their Disney movies. And you might think they're silly or trite or not cool, but you're going to feel that way. Very passionate about your 90s movies and your Pocahontas and Hunchback of Notre Dame and Mulan. I know they have their big fans. We both do. And we're not pooping on that. We totally understand it. We just wanted to do something a little different. We just talked about Gong Li, so that's why we wanted to talk about her now. And so this story is based on that. And we understand, well, there's just a lot of passion for this topic of Mulan.
Yes, which I totally
Yes.
get. American cinema is not as diverse as the American population.
Right.
And so, all of the cultures that make up our society are not equally represented and not even represented in proportion to, the population. So I say this as a Mexican American who saw Coco in the movie theaters like 8 times, I think. I don't even know how many times I've seen that movie. When you have a movie that represents your culture and it's like the first one or one of the few, it bears a burden that you're just never going to place on a Snow White or a Sleeping Beauty.
Exactly.
Just not going to happen. So there's that going in right from the get-go. I knew that this movie was based on kind of like an ancient epic poem, but I had never read it myself. So we were saying like it's very easy to find different translations. But again, this is another thing. So the poem is written in another language. That means that the translation is a little bit open to interpretation. So you can find slightly different meanings of things depending on what translation you find. So we tried to get our hands on a few different translations, and we both kind of agreed. It's so funny. We both kind of independently agreed that the one we like the best.
Right. It's from this YouTube channel called By the Book, which is different from the podcast By the Book when we had Kristen Meinzer on the show. But we were going to include that, and we'll include the poem. I just want to give just a little bit of background because this is how much we know about it. It's between the 4th to the 6th century AD. That's 200 years. They're not.
It's a long time ago.
Long time ago, and it's a big time space that it could have occurred. It's either in northern or southern dynasties. It's either the Ode to Mulan or Ballad of Mulan. There's all these different, like Margos said, there's interpretations, and we were doing a lot of research and there's a lot of YouTube channels and clips, episodes devoted to Mulan and how important she is and what the adaptation was like for people in 2020. And we understand that this is like, other than other Disney princesses, and we've talked about this when we did our month of Disney last November, there's Sleeping Beauty. What does she do? She sleeps. I mean, Belle.
It's not that exciting.
No.
It's not. And when we read Cinderella, we've read a lot of source material. Disney, this is their MO. They take this source material and they Disneyfy it. They add characters, they take characters away, they mash characters together. They'll change the setting, they'll change the time period. They're not really in the business of historical accuracy per se. But just to kind of place it in historical perspective, we're talking about the poem, is taking place, or at least is written around the end of the Roman Empire in the Western world. So that's how long ago we're talking about.
Right.
And it's about an old war. So it's a history piece even then. So it's old. It's old.
Yes, and the difference is that she's a woman character, and she is fighting in battle with men, and her family. So there's this war that's happening, and every household has to give somebody up to fight, and it's meant to be the oldest male child, and her family doesn't have one.
And we should say also, like, this is not. I know a little bit about Chinese history. We talked about this last time. I know a little bit about Chinese history, mostly from art history. We're not experts.
No.
There's a lot that we're ignorant about here. Just, we're not claiming to be historians of Chinese, even Asian, history at large. So, but my understanding is that the time and place setting of this is a pre-imperial China. It's in the northern part of what I think is modern day Mongolia. I think
That would make sense.
And the belief is that she's of this. She comes from this culture. I think it's called the Xingbang, who, and forgive me, sorry, we're going to mess up so many things in this episode, y'all. Just please know. Her culture is what I think eventually becomes Mongolian culture. So she's not like a Han Chinese, which is very much what the Disney version is. So it's not that. So already we're playing fast and loose with history and geography here, because I mean this is a huge area of land that we're talking about. You know, it's like Canada versus Guatemala. You know, it's like that different. But Disney kind of doesn't care about crap like that. They're like, you know,
No.
that's kind of, they're like, well, it's just over there.
Well, the story of Mulan is that she's this very brave warrior, and it just comes instinctually to her.
It's so good.
It's wonderful, and she has no superpowers. There's no mysticism. There's no chi.
No,
there's
she's
no
just
witchcraft.
smart.
Yeah.
And brave.
And agile, and her father is injured, and he's old, and she has a younger brother, I believe, in the story, and they're picking every man, and her dad's like, okay, I'll go fight, and she's like, no, that's a terrible idea, and in the middle of the night, she takes a horse, she takes his armor, she takes a sword, and she goes.
Yeah, there's this really cool section of the poem, and it's in the version that Margot's talking about, where Mulan goes to the east and she gets a horse, and she goes to the west and she gets a sword, and she goes to the north and she gets a shield, and so she's traveling all over, and she's getting these, you know, the best things from every region that she needs to really arm herself, because again, she's super smart, she's super clever. I will say there are some really good analysis for the lay person about like why Mulan isn't Chinese and what's wrong with this Disney depiction. We'll put those in the Facebook group for those of you who belong to the Facebook group, and they're really interesting, and I encourage you to watch them. But the poem is really beautiful. I loved that whole segment where she's going here to get this and she's going there to get that, and but there's not this element of like, I've dishonored my family by running away and pretending to be a man, or by not being a woman and getting married. She just is like, this is a terrible idea to send my old man. First of all, he's not going to help anybody. And if anything, he's going to be a burden to the army.
Right.
I'll go. Somebody needs to go. I will go.
Let's do this. Why don't we play it right now?
Awesome.
Okay, so we'll play that clip.
With the English translation. Last night, I saw the draft posters. The Khan is calling many troops. The army list is in 12 scrolls. On each scroll, there's father's name. Father has no grown-up son. Mulan has no elder brother. I want to buy a saddle and horse and serve in the army in father's place. In the East Market, she buys a spirited horse. In the West Market, she buys a saddle. In the South Market, she buys a bridle. In the North Market, she buys a long whip. At dawn, she takes leave of father and mother. In the evening, camps on the Yellow River's bank. She doesn't hear the sound of father and mother calling. She only hears the Yellow River's flowing water cry, "Jian, Jian." At dawn, she takes leave of the Yellow River. In the evening, she arrives at Black Mountain. She doesn't hear the sound of father and mother calling. She only hears Mount Yan's nomad horses cry, "Jiu, Jiu." She goes 10,000 miles on the business of war. She crosses passes and mountains like flying. Northern gusts carry the rattle of army pots. Chilly light shines on iron armor. Generals die in 100 battles. Stout soldiers return after 10 years. On her return, she sees the Son of Heaven. The Son of Heaven sits in the splendid hall. He gives out promotions in 12 ranks and prizes of 100,000 and more. The Khan asks her what she desires. Mulan has no use for a minister's post. I wish to ride a swift mount to take me back to my home. When father and mother hear daughter is coming, they go outside the wall to meet her, leaning on each other. When elder sister hears younger sister is coming, she fixes her rouge, facing the door. When little brother hears elder sister is coming, he whets the knife, quick, quick, for pig and sheep. I open the door to my east chamber. I sit on my couch in the West Room. I take off my wartime gown and put on my old-time clothes. Facing the window, she fixes her cloud-like hair. Hanging up a mirror, she dabs on yellow flower powder. She goes out the door and sees her comrades. Her comrades are all amazed and perplexed. Traveling together for 12 years, they didn't know Mulan was a girl.
And in this clip at the very end, they go back, they start in English, they start in Cantonese, they go into English, and they end in Cantonese. They miss a part of the poem that I super like, which is at the very, very end when she's home. Her comrades find out, she was there for 10 years, by the way. She's in...
Yeah, it's not a short war.
No.
It's quite a while she's living among these men.
It's not a season. She's there for many, many years, and nobody knew she was a woman. So when her comrades, this is the poem. Her comrades are all amazed and perplexed. Traveling together for 12 years, they didn't know Mulan was a girl. The he-hare's feet go hop and skip. The she-hare's eyes are muddled and fuddled. Two hares running side by side, close to the ground. How can they tell if I am he or she? I just love.
In other words, we were busy.
Yes.
We were busy fighting a war. Who cares?
Who cares if you can fight?
It's great.
Fight. Yeah.
I really loved it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what it reminded me of. And one of the things I really loved about it is, you know, she's brave, she's smart. She's not Wonder Woman where she comes from a magical island and yada yada. She is an ordinary girl who decides to do this and succeeds. And at the end, when she reveals herself to the people that she fought against, their reaction is not like, she's a witch, like in the movie. Mm-hmm. Their reaction is, oh, wow. Huh.
Yeah.
What do you know? It reminded me, like when I was in my teens, we took a vacation in Portugal, and we stayed in a monastery, or a former monastery, and it was named after some saint or other. And this saint, I'm putting finger quotes, this saint was a monk who had lived in the monastery and had lived in and served in the monastery among with all the other monks for years and years and years and years. And only when the monk died did they discover that the monk was a woman. This monk that had been living with them this whole time was a woman. So rather than have the reaction that they have in the Mulan ballad, which is like, oh wow, there was a moment of like, either we admit that we let a witch into our monastery.
Right.
Or, obviously no ordinary woman could have done this. So obviously she must be a saint. She must be some superhuman sent from God. And that explains why she was able to live among men, her betters for so long. I really loved I was kind of waiting to see how it was going to end. Like, are they going to find out? What's going to happen? What's their reaction going to be? And their reaction is just so respectful and grateful. It's a great poem. Why do neither of the movies end this way? They really kind of don't.
No, and she's this huge hero, and she's a folk hero, and she's one of the few women heroes that are fighting in battle, and she's very important to the culture.
Yeah.
In one of the YouTube clips I saw, it was a person who grew up in Hong Kong, and he said he and his schoolmates went to see a Disney movie and they didn't realize it was going to be Mulan. It was in the late 90s.
Oh.
And so he said the kids freaked out because this was a story like their grandparents talked about. It was an opera. It's many TV shows in Asia. It's many movies.
It's sort of like Joan of Arc, only we all know what happened to her when they found out, right?
Right. Yeah, it's their folklore. It's a folk hero of theirs, and so it was very, very important to them when this was being passed on to be adapted. As we said, we are talking about a Disney version. Like, we'll probably maybe when we do another Disney month later in the year, maybe we'll go really deeper into a Mulan episode because we can go back into that. But it does very well. I mean, it's very popular. Like I said, it just wasn't
the animated one.
The animated one I'm talking
Yes.
about, 1998. Excuse me. Yeah, I mean, and Disney, there's a lot of things. You look at that, and there's people like Miguel Ferrer and Marnie Nixon, and there's not a lot of Asian people in that cast.
No.
And or behind the scenes, or in the voices. So
or advising anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So people do make that criticism.
It's a very Epcot Center.
Yes.
China.
Yeah. Yes. And it's very popular. So Disney wanted to make a live action version. They're starting to do that. This is before they have the streaming channel. This is like over 10 years ago they started working on this, and it's like, who do you find to write it? Who do you find to put it? And it takes a dozen years to put together a Disney movie, even today. There's just a lot of work involved, and they really do their research. It's just that they change it to make things the way Disney wants to be. There's no cursing.
That's right.
There's no sexual picadillos being done or anything. It's a Disney movie. That is their brand, but they're so it's about 2015, and they're looking for an Asian director. And we've talked about there's many that you could choose from, and I understand like it's Niki Caro who they choose to be the director here, and it's like, well, it's not just an Asian story. It's a it's a female story, and she's a brilliant cinematographer, director, artist. But what happens then in China, and look, I'm not an expert on international politics, on indigenous communities, on Muslim communities around the world and how they're treated, but there's internment camps being created in China for Muslims, and it started about 2017. I was looking at BBC.
And in other words,
clip.
right when this movie was in production.
Was in pre-production.
Yes.
And Xinjiang is one of the bigger spots. And there's I was looking at a BBC News clip, and it was like, some of them have like 11,000 people in them.
It was terrible.
It's terrible.
It is terrible.
It is, yeah. Like, and it's like, how much do we know about China? How much do we know? What news can we trust? They're doing a lot of things with satellites and looking down at the ground, and there's this happening, and it's awful, and it's terrible, and it's a blight. And then the Asian community doesn't want this, but it's this. There was this fight against terrorism. I'm making air quotes on my own here, and this is what was thought to. And they're calling them schools, and they're being re-educated, which is always a terrifying notion to me. I don't think that ever really just goes very well. But that's what's happening in Xinjiang, in China, when they're pre-producing this movie, and they're putting it together, and they're going to. As I said in the Disney version, it's you have Eddie Murphy, and like I said, you have all kinds of right. And so here they're like, well, what if we have an Asian cast? We have the best Asian actors we can
Which
find.
Is ridiculous that's like so groundbreaking in the 21st century, but
Yes.
there we are.
That's the world that we live in, and we do. It's I was just like, I'm just trying to get her. Yeah, Yifei Liu. There's Donnie Yen, Jason Scott Lee, Gong Lee, Jet Li. It's a really fantastic cast, and they get this woman to direct it. And then there's this thing that she's from New Zealand, and she did a movie called Whale Rider. Do you remember that? That was her film. And
I do. Yeah.
It's excellent. It
is excellent. It's very good.
And it's also about indigenous communities in a large, right. So they film it. Disney films part of it in China and part of it in New Zealand. And so then there's this whole thing of like, well, how much was filmed in Xinjiang? Because at the credits, they're like, thank you, China, for being so great and let us film there. And there's all these human rights problems. And
it wasn't a good look.
No. Disney's had some stumbles in the last few years. Let's be clear.
And there was an outcry of Disney, you've got to, and they were like, well, that's traditionally what you do. You thank the place where you which is true.
Yes.
But I don't know. I mean, I don't think you want to be like, well, thanks Auschwitz for hosting.
Yeah.
I mean, really. And when there's such an outcry for people, such prominent people asking Disney to say something, not asking them to pull the plug on the production, not asking them to shelve the movie, just say something.
Yes.
They're not awesome at that.
No. And this is China is a huge audience for movies, by the way. If your film cannot play in China, you got a problem. So this was also part of, they're making money here. This is their new audience. They want to appeal to the new audience. And so what do? Let's play the trailer. Why don't we play this? Let's play the trailer. Because there's also things going on in the world in 2020 I don't know if you've heard about.
Yeah. For those of you who may want to forget about that awful year. Yeah, let's play the trailer.
All right, we'll take a quick break and we'll play the trailer and we'll go right back into it.
Do you know why the phoenix sits on the right hand of the emperor? She is his guardian, his protector. That she's both beautiful and strong. Your job is to bring honor to the family. Do you think you can do that?
Citizens, we are under attack from northern invaders.
Their leader calls himself Khan. Fights alongside a witch.
No survivors. By edict of His Imperial Majesty, every family must contribute one man to fight.
Have you no son?
I am blessed with 2 daughters. I will fight.
We must be strong. This time he will not return. Loyal, brave, and true. It is my duty to protect my family.
Ancestors, please protect her.
What is your name, soldier?
Hua Jun, Commander, son of Hua Zhou.
We're going to make men out of every single one of you. Close the gate!
The spirit is evident, but something holds you back.
When they find out who you are, they will show you no mercy. I'm Hua Mulan. I will bring honor to us all.
This film is formally released March 9th, 2020, which we have to remember that. I mean,
Was this like 5 days before we all packed up our desks
Yeah.
and went home?
Yeah.
Something like that?
for a couple of weeks, we thought, or maybe
Yeah.
a couple of months tops.
Yep.
The movie, there's no audience. There's crickets. Like, what can you do? Nobody's allowed outside.
We're microwaving our mail.
Do you remember?
Wiping down our groceries.
I still have like
with
boxes
bleach.
of gloves, like because I just
Oh,
bought
yeah.
a bunch of gloves,
Me
like to
too.
handle things, because like
Me too.
groceries and stuff
Yep.
like that. That's part of what's happening here too. And then the movie is that so Disney makes this decision, and they put a lot of money into it for sure over 12 years. I'm sure.
Clearly.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's
Yeah.
on a lot of it's on the screen. It's a beautiful
Yeah.
looking film.
We will talk about that, but yes.
Yeah. But the box office wasn't great because people were locking up, starting
People were
in China,
scared of
by the way.
dying.
Yes.
So we didn't go to the movies so much.
No. And we're home, and we're told to stay home, and we do stay home. And then Disney Plus had just released maybe a year before the streaming service. And so
It was really new.
It's very new.
It's still pretty new, so it was a weird time to have a huge movie coming out. It was a weird time for a lot of things. It was a weird time to own a restaurant. It was a weird time
Yes.
to, be a teacher. It was a weird time for, this is one of those things that, unfortunately, I think a lot of the stink on this movie is to do with the very poor timing. I mean, both in terms of the shooting schedule and location, as we just discussed, and then, of course, March 9th, 2020. I mean, really?
It comes about March 9th. So nobody's going to the movie theater. And we started going weekly then because we were just like, we got to do something. And the movie does get a release date of September 4th. And Disney said, fine, we'll release it on streaming, but it's $29.99, even if you have a subscription. Which, on the one hand, sure, most people are going to watch it with their entire family, so that's not too bad.
It's still cheaper than going to a movie theater if
Sure.
you got 3 kids. Okay.
Right. I think it's a shame because this is, I think, a beautiful looking film. I would
It's such
love
a
to see
movie
this.
that's for
Yes.
a theater and a big screen. When you watch it, you can't. I mean, you and I both watched it streaming.
Yes.
And you can't help but think like, oh man, on the big screen, this had to have been just
I'm sure it's
breathtaking.
the sound,
Yeah.
the
sound is really
costumes.
good.
I mean,
I
it's
know.
it's a top notch production.
It is. I'm sorry to say, but it is. It's true. And I know there are problems.
Yes.
I have mixed feelings about this movie. I kind of don't know how to feel about this movie. But again, and a live action movie, and this is the other thing, is a live action movie is not a cartoon. A live action movie just brings a different level of expectation. It has more responsibility. We don't have talking dragons that are funny and there to crack us up, right? So I can't, in some ways it's darker, but in other ways it's not. It's a big ask. It's a big lift they're trying to do here with this movie. And okay, Disney, like there's a lot of things. We know it's a broad brush no matter what with Disney. Like when we were talking, we've talked about a lot of Disney movies. Like when we talked about Bedknobs and Broomsticks. I mean, talk about Nazis. Like the Nazis in Bedknobs and Broomsticks are, they're bumbling
Laughable.
Hogan's Heroes kind of Nazis. Again, Coco. My people never had ourselves represented in that way. And I mean, I just burst into tears
Right.
when Coco started. But there are things in there that are totally wrong or totally, being presented in the wrong way, or, they're mashing things together that don't go together. There's we could be here all day pointing out, the idiosyncrasies and problems with Coco. But so there's just going to be that. There's just going to be an element of that. And so I get it. And I can totally see, and yes, if it were my culture, like again, watching Coco, I still had moments the whole time where I was like, really? No, but that's not, but you know what? There it is on the screen. And all kinds of people went to see it. And they didn't care that it was a quote unquote Mexican movie. And had it not been March 9th, 2020, we don't know. Like, there's no way to go back in time. But had it not been what was going on, had it not been the human rights scandal, it's hard to say what the reception would be. But here we are. That is what happened. It came out March 9th, 2020. It was filmed amid this huge human rights controversy and tragedy. It's kind of just always going to be forever stained with that. And that's unfortunate because I do think there's a lot of stuff to really like about this movie.
I forgot to mention this. There's another thing is that our actress, our lead, Yifei Liu, so Hong Kong has been, I remember, you and I remember Tiananmen Square, like what a,
yes,
we were old enough to remember that, what a
Yeah.
big deal was. Hong Kong has had issues of the police, clamping down on people, clamping down on protests, clamping down on speech, media. And she basically says, I love cops and I don't care if it gets me beaten, which is not a great look. I think she's beautiful and she's perfect as our
She
Mulan.
does a great job.
She's interesting. She's stunning. She's expressive. She's athletic. I think she's from China originally. She lived in New York for a while. She's wonderful. She's a wonderful presence, but I get it. Like there's that stain that's on top of it. And it's annoying when you want to enjoy a thing and you don't want to think about the politics of the person. Sometimes it's hard. And especially when it comes to human rights and it comes to people being abused. So I don't want to let that go because a lot of people do mention that when this movie comes out. I think she's excellent, but I loved some people are like, oh, that part when she's a little kid and she has magic powers and she's kind of flipping around and doing things. I think it's adorable. There are people who are just like, I think that's dumb. And I'm like, I think it's cute.
It is. It's not it's not the poem. In the poem, she is merely a very smart, brave young woman. And that should be enough. Yeah, it should be enough. But it's Disney. So, Sleeping Beauty's talking to birds.
Yes.
And they're talking back, It's Disney. So we have to there's a lot of moments where you're like, it's Disney, it's in the wrong part. It's in the wrong part of Asia altogether.
Right.
Sure. It's in the wrong era. Okay. She's got magic powers. She's not just a regular woman who is talented and brave and strong. Fine. It's Disney.
She has chi. She has this magic chi.
She has this magic chi, which everybody has. Mm-hmm. But so we have all these things, and then also too, the other thing that we haven't discussed, the other additional layer of burden on this movie is we are talking about a post Me Too era,
right?
Which, if we look at the animated Mulan, which again I haven't seen. I've only
read
the
night
analysis.
for the first time.
We'll talk about that in a minute, because we wanted to do it this way, where Margot D watched the animated and I did not. So I'm looking at this movie as it's on its own, completely on its own. So we just kind of wanted to see how that would go. Mm-hmm. But so there's that as well. So there's this whole kind of little feminist attempt on Disney's part of like, she has this light, but she has to suppress it because she's a girl, and she's going to be ostracized. And what happens when they ostracize you and they call you a witch? Well, then you become a witch, right? Mm-hmm. So it's trying to do a lot. But again, I mean, I'm going back and forth. Again, I don't know how to feel about this movie because there's stuff I like. I thought the sound was good. Costumes are amazing. The art direction is spectacular.
There's comic relief, like with her.
It's got comic moments somehow. It's amazingly.
Yeah, and there is some like I like to say, so she has to like you were talking about. She has to kind of keep her femininity down. Like that's the thing. So there's like, she's always kind of, so she bandages her breasts. She has this like leather plate around her chest, which saves her, by the way, because it's something her father gives her. But she can't bathe with the rest of them. There's certain things she can't do. And so she can be just so close to them, but then has to like keep to herself. And so there's this other person that she's kind of like attracted to that. And in the Disney version, he's going to be her boyfriend. That's what we want. And that's what, spoiler, that's what you get. And I actually did get excited when I saw that. But it's
none
fun.
of this is in the poem.
Right.
None of it.
None of it.
It's Disney.
Right. And there is the scene where she's bathing. And then there's the other. So there is sort of like a homoerotic, you almost could say. There's sort of like a sexual tension.
Which, again, is really edgy for Disney.
Very, very edgy for Disney because you don't see anything. They never kiss. I mean, all spoilers, but none of this ever happens. But
they have a chemistry, and a chemistry in which the cis male is, or suppose, he is having feelings for a fellow who he thinks is a male soldier
who reports to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
we should say Gong Li is Zhang Zhang. And, God, she's so great.
I just love her so much.
We talked about her last week, and it's is it Raise the Red Lantern? Raising the Red Lantern?
Raise the Red Lantern.
Raise the Red Lantern, and she plays Xing Zhang, and so she is this. They don't have this in the poem either, and I don't think they have this in the Disney version, but she's like this shapeshifter, and so she's like a phoenix, and then she's an eagle, and she's a this and then a that.
She's a witch. She's a witch. And she, like Mulan in the movie, was a little girl who had a lot of chi and couldn't suppress who she really was, and because of that, her society totally kicked her out, and now she's a witch.
who are you?
I'm Hua Jun, soldier in the Emperor's Imperial Army.
Liar. Your deceit weakens you. It poisons your chi. Again, who are you?
I'm Hua Jun, soldier in the Emperor's Imperial Army.
Then you will die, pretending to be something you're not.
And Hua Jun did die. For a lie can only live so long. But Mulan lived.
And she reports to a very powerful male who's going after our Mulan because Mulan is advancing, and she's the one that can kind of tell, like, oh, there's something up with you. You're not like the others. You're a girl, aren't you? You're a female. They do have these moments, but she's only treated like an equal by this mean guy. And that's why she kind of takes on this role with him, because everywhere else people just treat her in a demeaning fashion, or they don't respect her power.
He wants to use the baddie.
Yes.
Wants to use the witch to use her power to get power for himself. And I have to say, I really liked, I don't know, I can't tell you why. I can't explain why, but I really liked, because Disney has a lot of witches, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot, Disney has a long tradition of evil witches, powerful women who are ostracized and get it in the end. In this case, we have a quote unquote witch who is with the bad guy only because he's the only one that isn't kicking her out into the cold. She ultimately isn't a bad person. She's just a powerful person.
Yes, and he respects her. That's Jason Scott Lee as Bori Khan.
He's so good. He's so good in that role.
He played Bruce Lee.
He's a great baddie.
Do you really good Bruce Lee? We played Bruce Lee back in the day.
He's great.
He is. And so and he's very powerful and scary in this movie, but she's with him because he respects her. Nobody else would. What is she going to do with her superpowers? And she likes Mulan, but it's not, it's all business for her though. But then they do have this respect for another. I think this movie, there's a scene where she causes an avalanche to happen and the snow happens.
It's so exciting.
I would love to see that in movie theater because
I know it had to be
thrilling. It's honestly like gobsmacking, beautiful. She rises out of it with her horse, and I love horses. And
there's a lot of great
horse
trickery going on in this movie. It's real good.
And she comes out of that, and then eventually people realize, like, she's shunned, but then they bring her back because she's powerful. But Mulan, just like her, when she really hits her essence and she just embraces it and lets everybody see it, she becomes the most powerful one there. And it's spectacular to see. And she learns all kinds of lessons, and she loses the sword, and she has to fight against Jason Scott Lee. And spoiler, in the end, she comes home. And that's what, by the way, that's the whole thing about Mulan. She just wanted to go home. She didn't want to fight forever. She wanted to be in the...
Yeah.
She missed her family.
In the other one, in the poem, she goes home as well. But most of the stuff that we just talked about is not in the poem at all.
Right. Right. But you heard, that was it.
It's just... you have to kind of... there's a lot you have to be willing to kind of put out of your mind as you're watching this movie. Least of all, the fact that, in the beginning with her parents, like I can't remember what's the name of the actress. She's in Joy Luck Club, the one that plays Mulan's mom.
Yes.
She's 64 years old.
Rosalind Chow. Yeah.
With this little girl.
Yeah.
She purportedly, I guess she had it like in her 50s.
There's some Asian actors that have been in many things. I think you just kind of like they're
great though. She's great. I buy it. I buy that that's her mom. I buy that that's her dad.
I love the matchmaking stuff in the beginning.
It's great.
It's really good.
It's cute. It's one of the. It's it's a lighter moment, and the other thing you have to remember too in terms of like putting all of the expectations. Like I said, there's a lot of expectations just because it's a live action film, let alone that it's, a rare representation of a not white family in American cinema for kids. And the movie, it's about a war. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of fighting and a lot of killing, but there's not a lot of blood. Like, it's scary, but it's not so scary that, it's for kids. So yes, there's combat. Yes, there's killing, but it's, it is in a contained kind of Disney sort of a way.
Is it PG-13?
It might be. Nobody's being disemboweled.
No.
It's a very clean war.
Yeah, you don't see any blood. There's no really gruesome stuff that's kept to a minimum. But it is intense. I mean, I think for little kids, this would be very scary.
Intense.
Yeah.
Yes,
there's also no singing. It just hits me like
no. And I'm
none.
assuming there must be. I'm and again, I'm watching it not having seen the animated one. I'm sure I'm missing all kinds of little nods and Easter eggs and things to the animated version that's going on in this movie. Whatever, I don't care.
But there's a cricket,
anytime Gong Li shows up, I'm just like my chin on both my fists, and I'm just like waiting to see what she's going to do this time. I just love that woman.
Her costumes are fantastic.
The costumes are amazing.
But in the end, spoiler, but she sacrifices.
Turns out she's Snape.
Yes. Well, she sacrifices herself. She turns into an eagle or some kind of a different kind of bird and takes there's a lot of arrow shooting in this. And she takes the arrow and then Mulan holds her in her arms. And that's sort of this, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful moment. It's I don't know what to say. I really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was beautiful.
I was entertained.
Yeah.
I was.
I get all the problems with it too.
I know. I totally do too. I completely get all the problems. There are problems. They are real problems.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm conflicted. I'm conflicted about this movie. I mean, there's some really good stuff there.
Yeah.
I wish that Disney had the balls to say like human rights violations are bad.
Yeah.
Like, Florida.
Well, there's been quite a few missteps from Disney in the last couple of years. I'm trying to think. Sorry. It was nominated for best costume design.
The costumes
and visual effects, and they're both spectacular.
They're brilliant.
Yeah.
The performances are good. The writing, it's a little clunky. You know, it's a lot of honor and dishonor and very broad strokes. Very, very broad strokes. But so is everything in Disney. I mean, that's just how it is.
There's
That's
big
what
themes.
they do.
It's really big themes that they're going for. I just saw it. It won the Costume Designer Guild Awards, and it deserved that because just for Gong Li's outfit was like
they were so beautiful. The costumes were so pretty. I kept stopping and like looking at all the detail and all the costumes.
Yeah, the visual effects. I mean, and it's funny because they said, well, they didn't film everything in Xinjiang. They were, there was only 18 times they filmed in China. The rest was in New Zealand. Like 18 is kind of a lot. That's
kind of a lot.
That's not for nothing, but it is beautiful. I mean, the locations are spectacular.
It's gorgeous.
It's got
It's
some
gorgeous.
light moments to it that are funny. Like I said, her crew, the guys that she hangs out with, that she's friends with.
When they sweep over the Forbidden City and it's all like all the people and all the
there's a lot of work in this. There's a lot of time. There's a lot of money spent to make it. It looks spectacular, and the sound is great. The music is good. I know they don't have all the songs, and that's like I was saying. So I watched it late last night, so I've only seen it once. But there's one time where the grandmother is singing, and all of a sudden it's Marnie Nixon, which is like, can you get any? That was Cinderella's voice, was it not? I mean,
she's like, oh, just get Marnie.
Yeah, just get Marnie. But
yeah, she's right over there. Just grab her.
But I get it. Like, there's people who say, yeah, like what you were talking about with Coco. Like, that's a really good example of like they're just taking a little bit of everything, and it's like, how many people work on a movie? Like a couple of thousand, but especially at the creative details, it's a couple of dozen people, and everybody's going to have their ideas, and everybody wants to get something in, and you only have 2 hours, like to get it. So,
yeah, and that's kind of long, for a kids movie, but it's action packed, of course. I think the pacing of it is good. The moments of levity that there are,
right?
And yet it's taking the subject matter of hiding who she is versus being who she is. It's taking that seriously.
I wonder, like, if we weren't in a pandemic, what would have happened with this?
It's hard to say.
It's really hard to say because this is all still, like you said, human rights abuses are happening there, and it's terrible. And we're, a couple of liberal women that, of course, we hate that.
I just feel like, I know, and I just feel like, and this is maybe I shouldn't say this. This is a really dumb analogy, and I'm realizing that it's very dumb.
No,
but look, everything is made in China. Like in the United States, everything, like I'm looking at my desk, almost everything I am looking at was probably made in China, including this microphone, this computer I'm looking at. Our government officials on both sides of the aisle are able to condemn human rights violations. I feel like, they're somehow managed to walk that line of like negotiating these trade agreements and also, at least paying lip service to human rights violations bad. I don't understand the Disney reluctance, it's odd to me, but
they're used to just being Disney and being enough.
It's true. This is true. Yeah, I know. I am watching this Florida thing with great interest. Yep. Again, being from Southern California, where Anaheim is just over an hour from here. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. So, book versus movie.
Oh, book. I mean, I like the movie, but I was really moved by the poem. I mean, we listened to different versions of it, and each one had a kind of a new, fun little nuance to it. I had never really heard it before. I was really unfamiliar with it. I can totally get why she would become this big cultural figure.
Yes.
Of course she would. I really enjoyed learning about this epic poem. And it's very evocative. For being so short, it really paints such a beautiful picture. I mean, you really can see her riding into battle and gathering this and gathering that, and her kind of pragmatism about the whole she's not torn up inside hiding who she is and all of that. She's doing her duty and she's being a soldier, and that is who she is. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic.
She's looking out for her dad.
Yeah. It's great.
Yeah. There's all kinds of. I always used to think of. I was trying to find a clip, and somebody will probably find it really easily and make me look like a fool. But I was trying to find the Margaret Cho clip where Margaret Cho had
Mulan!
her mother like yelling for her. I was looking for that. Margaret Cho is great, by the way. I was looking at a bunch of her clips. I'm like, she is hilarious.
Who is Korean? Let's be clear.
Right, and she's Korean, by the way. Exactly. So yeah, movie.
But anyway, I'm glad we looked at it again. If nothing else, to learn about this amazing epic poem in this incredible cultural figure that I was completely ignorant of.
Yeah, same.
Really fun to learn about that.
And just
I totally get it.
IMDb saying to you like, "Hey, it's a poem. Let's just do it." And you're like, "Cool, we could do what we're gonna do next." So we had more time for it.
Yeah, because here's the thing, y'all. We're doing an episode every single week. That doesn't. We're doing Joy Luck Club next.
Yes.
Which is not a short book.
No.
It's not something we can do. We can't do a Joy Luck Club every week. We would love to. We cannot. But we're going to do Joy Luck Club next week. So I love we have this little continuity of Raise the Red Lantern with Gong Li, and then Gong Li was in this.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's your name? I just
Ming Na Wen
a second ago.
Or no, Rosalind
the one who
Chow.
plays the mom. Yes, Rosalind Chow in Mulan, and now Rosalind Chow is going to be in Joy Luck Club. And I haven't seen Joy Luck Club since it came out, or I haven't read it since it came out either. So I'm looking forward to looking at it again.
I think both were in the 90s. I think that's the same for me. So I'm really excited about it. That's going to be our next one. And once again, please do send us your suggestions and all those different places that we mentioned before. Oh, I forgot to mention, if you would like some stickers, we'd be happy to drop them in the mail for you. Just send us your address at bookversusmoviepodcast@gmail.com. And Margot, where can they find you?
You can find me online at coloniabook.com, and all of my social media callouts are at She's Not Your Mama. And where can they find you?
You can find me at Brooklyn Fit Chick for Twitter and Instagram. My site is brooklynfitchick.com. My book is filmed in Brooklyn. You could find it on Amazon. You want to pre-order a copy, that would be amazing. All right, we will be back soon with a new episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Book versus Movie podcast. We are a part of the Frolic Podcast Network. You can find more podcasts you will love at frolic.media/podcasts. We follow the hashtags LadyPodSquad and Podern Family. If you want to support the show, you can go to our Patreon page, go to Patreon, and look for Book versus Movie podcast. We have a basic Facebook page, but we also have a private Facebook group. Go to Facebook and type in Book vs. Movie Podcast Group if you want to join that. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Book vs. Movie. Spell all those words out. If you'd like to send us an email, it's bookversusmoviepodcast, spelled it all out, @gmail.com. You can follow Margot D at Brooklyn Fit Chick on social media, and Margot P at She's Nacho Mama. Thanks so much again for checking out our show, and we'll be back soon with a new episode.